Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Alan.
And you are officially tuned in to the GG Dispatch. Each week on Tuesday, bright and early, we consolidate the week's biggest headlines in gaming news. Whether you're listening in on your commute, during your workout, or you just have us on in the background, we want to thank you for listening in. Speaking of thanks, another thank you to the kind folks at Audio Technica for providing the microphones that both Alan and I are using, the AT2020 USB-X. Whether you're just starting out on your content creator journey or you're a seasoned pro, Audio Technica has the products for you. Another very busy weekend. Went up and saw my brother-in-law up in the mountains, and I dropped off my gaming PC with my young nephew. So
How hard would it be to get that?
I know. I mean, I had mentioned how, I got my Steam Deck, and I've been sort of doing my PC gaming on my Steam Deck, which has been a ton of fun. And I realized I didn't really need my PC anymore. And so initially I was going to try and sell it, like, offer up or something. And then my wife was like, well, why don't we ask some family, right? Some friends and family, if one of the nephews or nieces wants a computer. And so I put the call out there, and my brother-in-law was like, yeah, like, my nephew is about 8 years old, and he plays Minecraft, but he plays it on the console. So he plays, I think it's called the Bedrock version. So you can't do mods or anything with it. And so, yeah, he wants to be able to get the Java version to install mods and do all that fun stuff. And so that's what we ended up doing. So we came to a good price, kind of below market on the parts and everything, just a little something to get it off my hands, and brought it up. And I got it all set up and everything before we brought it up there. And now I'm interested to see how he kind of delves into the world of PC gaming. I hope Greg Miller's not too upset with me.
No one tell Greg.
Nobody tell Greg what's up. But yeah, I mean, it's I'm excited to be able to kind of enable that, open the door of gaming to my nephew. So that was kind of fun.
How soon do you think it is until he goes like completely ham and just like starts hosting like Minecraft servers?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I know he's interested in the stuff, and it's a lot of the YouTube that he watches and things like that. And so I don't know how long it'll take, or if he'll really dig into it like that, or if he'll just appreciate having the flexibility to be able to do the things that he's seeing online. So regardless, I'm excited to open that door, and I hope that he has a good time and he still focuses on his homework and does everything he needs to do. It's a whole different headache with like managing game time, when you're a kid. Which leads me to an interesting question. I'm curious, like, when you were younger, Alan, did your parents, like, did they monitor your game time? Did they like have like a time limit for how long you could play?
Yeah, like I usually was not allowed to play during the week. It was
Okay.
more like a weekend thing, So during the week, it was just homework, and you watch some TV or something, and then go to bed. Summer was a bit different, just because there's not like much to do, and especially down here in the South, it's super crazy hot. And some days it's just for staying inside and kind of just playing some video games. But yeah, definitely for sure there were limitations on like when and for how long I could play.
Yeah. When I was younger, I got an hour on Saturday. And my earliest, well, actually, I think my earliest years of playing, because I started playing when I was like 2 years old. My uncle put a Nintendo controller in my hand and was like, "Hey, here's a Nintendo." And so I started playing when I was like super young like that. And so I don't even know, between 2 and 5, how many hours I was really playing or anything like that. I'm sure my mom was monitoring that. And then, but my earliest memories of, being conscious, playing video games, it was an hour on Saturday. And then my mom said, well, once you're done with your homework, then you can play during the week. So then, of course, I started rushing through my homework to get game time. And of course, that reflected in my grades, and so it, it turned into oh, your Nintendo is broken, quote unquote, because of course, the Nintendo was a fickle mistress. You could put a cartridge in there and you'd get that flashing blue and green screen. Um, and yeah, that happened a couple times in a row, and my mom kind of sees the opportunity, was like, oh well, guess it's broken, and put it up in the closet, and I didn't play for like a year and a half. And after that, I just randomly decided to bring it down. Like, oh, I wonder if this works. Of course, first time, boots up right away. And then that I kind of learned at that point, because at that I was about my nephew's age at that time, or maybe a little bit older, like around 9 or 10. And so by that point, I was like, okay, I gotta stay on top of my work. I gotta do what I gotta do, and I went back to some weekend game time, and kind of expanded from there. So anyway, it's always interesting to me, kind of, especially in the modern day, seeing how parents approach controlling the media, controlling screen time, game time, that sort of thing. But now I'm an adult, so I get to play as much video games as I want, and of course the catch-22 is I have no time. So even though I could play as much as I want to, I can't. But the time that I have been playing games lately, I've been spending time with Stellar Blade, and it's been so much fun. I've really been enjoying it. I mean, the whole discourse, obviously, around it being censored and things like that is utterly ridiculous and dumb. But putting all that aside, the combat is super clean. I really enjoy the level of difficulty so far is in a pretty sweet spot. I just beat the first major boss. And so far, like the move set and the speed and like the frenetic action, it feels really good in the hand. And it's just challenging enough where, with bosses, you definitely need to learn some of their move sets. You definitely need to time your parries and things like that. But it's not like ridiculously difficult. Like I haven't been like hitting a brick wall or anything when it comes to any of the bosses so far. That might change. That might change in the next, 8 to 10 hours. But as of now, I'm having a great time. Music is super cool. The aesthetic is really cool. Narrative is simple, but effective. And yeah, it's been a ton of fun.
And you played Near, right? And you beat it.
Yes, yeah. Near. I mean, Stellar Blade is a shade of Near Automata. Obviously, like it's just it kind of pales in comparison. But I think the key there is you don't need to kind of sit them next to each other. I think Near is a sort of like elevated version of it, but Stellar Blade is sort of like Devil May Cry ish in the action and the speed, compared to Near, which I think Near is a bit more strategic in the combat, even more so than Stellar Blade was. Yeah.
Okay, so I was just wondering if you've played enough to kind of tell if it was able to become more than a Nier clone and be its own thing, or if it was just kind of like it's just aping super hard off that and just kind of
Yeah, I don't
unless
think
you're
it.
Nier with a different skin.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be able to depart from Near. Like it's too much of a similarity, I would say, in terms of what it's trying to do with the narrative. Obviously, Near went way deeper. So like imagine if you just took Near Automata at like absolute face value, like just total, skimming the top layer. That's basically Stellar Blade. And then like you plunge deep, and then you get to like more of like Near Automata and all the different like endings and things like that. But you still can't kind of separate Stellar Blade from Near. They're just too similar in that regard. So
Okay, maybe, but it seems like it did well. So maybe for the second one, they can do something that's more them versus just kind of being like a okayish clone of Nier.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so that's pretty much how I spent my weekend. What have you been playing and doing lately, Alan?
So for me, my I've kind of reverted to like my comfort food, which is FIFA. Uh, it's one of the reasons that I've always kind of enjoyed being on Game Pass. Like I don't need to be on the latest FIFA, or in this case, like it's called a EAFC, I think now. I'm fine with the like prior year version and getting my creative player and doing the career mode and kind of getting my fun there. So this past week, I just been doing that. I just been hopping onto that. Whenever I get a couple of different chances during the day. I love being able to just go in there for 20 to 30 minutes, play a couple of different games, and then just pop right out. There's no commitment. There's no I'm starting this huge story or I have to have at least an hour and a half to be able to feel like I can accomplish enough in a game and like I would in another game. So that's really what I've been going back to this past week. Just getting a lot of good time in FIFA.
Yeah. Yeah. I never really got into I didn't really get into sports games in general. Like I've never really been into like Madden or FIFA or anything like that. And so I'm always curious, folks who are really into those like sports games and stuff. Like, what is it about like FIFA, for example, besides like the kind of pop in, pop out? Like, what is it about the game that you really enjoy? Is it like the authenticity of like the character models? Does it you know pretty accurately represent the the game, all the intricacy of the game, that sort of thing? Like I'm just interested in why people get into the sports games more so than other genres.
Well, first and foremost, I'm a fan of the sport of soccer. Like, in my house, like my dad was huge into soccer, and he kind of passed that on to us. So I do like the authenticity. I like all the teams. How good of a job EA really does of sort of capturing that vibe of when you're at that stadium, you hear the chanting, to be able to take your like little created player and start him from like the lowest league possible and getting him up all the way to the biggest league possible and the biggest team possible. And it kind of circles back to our original conversation of like how like your parents put any restrictions and like for my parents they knew that, oh, it's a sports game, it's like it's EA Madden or FIFA or whatever, we know that we can safely give this to you and there's not going to be any objectionable content in it because it's just a sports game.
Right,
So like
right.
it was
That's
super
fair.
easy to convince them to, yeah, get me FIFA 20 or FIFA 19 or like, yeah, sure, no problem. Way more than it was to say like, oh, get me Sekiro Shadows Die Twice or something. They were not going to get me that.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's both a combination of enjoying the sport itself and also uh, being the easiest games to access growing up.
yeah. Okay, no, that definitely makes sense. Like from an accessibility standpoint, like okay, as a parent, I don't have to worry about heads flying off and like blood and gore and sexual themes and all that other stuff when it's just when it's a sports game. So makes it a little bit more accessible. So I like that. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and dive into our stories. We've got four stories, well, like three and a half. Starting with Call of Duty is coming to a Game Pass. This is from Ollie Welsh at Polygon. This year's Call of Duty will go straight to Game Pass, report says. Microsoft intends to put its $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard to use by releasing the next Call of Duty game directly onto its Game Pass subscription service, the Wall Street Journal reports. The Wall Street Journal says the plan will be announced at Xbox's annual summer showcase on June 9th. Holy cow, it's so close. The move has been expected ever since Microsoft first announced its intention to buy the publisher. Call of Duty is Activision's biggest franchise, and its potential value to Game Pass was assumed to be the crown jewel of the acquisition, particularly after Microsoft made it clear that it would not consider making Call of Duty games console exclusive to Xbox. But there were still persistent doubts that Microsoft would pull the trigger and make Call of Duty a day one Game Pass release. The series, which sees a new full price release every calendar year, is enormously lucrative, selling around 25 million copies annually. The financial wisdom of allowing these sales to be cannibalized as a loss leader to grow subscription numbers has been questioned. There have been some signs that Microsoft was cooling on Game Pass as a business model too. The company only recently ended a 2-year silence on subscriber numbers, which is at 34 million apparently. And Microsoft Gaming chief Phil Spencer has admitted to a slowdown in growth. A recent move towards multi-platform publishing indicated that Microsoft is more focused on maximizing profit by selling games wherever possible than in investing in its own platforms. And some interpreted the closure of the studio's Tango Gameworks in Arcane Austin as a sign that Microsoft was more interested in making games with strong sales potential than in stocking Game Pass with a broad range of titles which had seemed to be its goal during its long studio acquisition spree. In that context, sacrificing sales by putting the latest Call of Duty on Game Pass is a clear sign that Microsoft is committed to the service and that Plan A is still very much in effect. Thoughts on this, Alan? I know we were just talking about this last week, after the closures and everything else and the bad week that Xbox had. This seems to cement the strategy, but what are your thoughts on this?
I think it needed to happen. I think that if they come out like, yeah, you're going to get everything except Call of Duty, that kind of breaks the promise that they sold everyone on, and uh, it would really cloud Game Pass. I think that if they made that move, it would be fairly swift movement by people on the service, probably cancel because they're like, well, if you're already not going to give me that, next time around it won't be the next Halo, it won't be the next Forza because you're counting on making some sales there. I also think that it's just a good move. I know that people say that, oh, it's going to cannibalize it. When you really think about it, for all the people who've already been on Game Pass, like they've been there even without Call of Duty there. Like how many of those gamers are really were going to buy Call of Duty and you're going to lose those sales? I just don't know. I think it's a win because I think that now all of a sudden people who wouldn't normally buy Call of Duty every year were like, oh well, it's part of Game Pass. Let me go check it out. And if they have a blast, that opens them up to buying the Battle Pass. That opens them up to buying skins. And I think that ends up
Yeah,
actually working out better for Xbox.
yeah. I am curious to know, like, if they, by putting the game on Game Pass, like a day and date release on Game Pass, do they forecast to be able to make the money back on the add-ons, right? Like, have they crunched the numbers to be like, okay, well, it doesn't really matter if we sell 25 million copies. If we put it on Game Pass and it has 34 million subscribers, we'll make the money and then some on those people that have Game Pass, or the additional people that will sign up for Game Pass to get Call of Duty. And then, again, buy the Battle Pass, buy the skins, buy, whatever the case might be. So yeah, I mean, I guess I am glad. I think this is Microsoft sort of, or Xbox sort of deciding on a strategy, or really reiterating that they are sticking to that strategy, even if from the outside looking in, it looks kind of wild. I can respect them for at least sticking to it, because if they did sort of hesitate on this and say, oh, we're not going to do Game Pass, or we're not going to do Call of Duty on Game Pass after all, et cetera, then it's like, okay, now we're really up in the air. Now you're going to start bleeding Game Pass subscribers. Nobody's not really interested or invested in your hardware. And, the Game Pass service is basically the future of your various libraries and studios is kind of up in the air. So that, I think, would have been a worst case scenario. So it's good to see that they are actually saying, no, like, this is the plan. We're going to put Call of Duty on Game Pass, and we'll see
I think
how
it's
that
the only
impacts the
move
subscription.
because like
Yeah. Yeah.
Game Pass is what businesses love to call like MRR, monthly recurring revenue. That's very important for businesses, especially ones that are traded on Wall Street. And like, yeah, Xbox isn't doing so hot, but I think last time we checked, they had like some 30 some odd million Game Pass subscribers.
Yeah. It was 34 million. Yeah.
Yes, that means every single month you're getting anywhere from between 10 and I think it's like 17 or $18 for Ultimate right now. In that range from those 30 whatever million people every single month. That's money in the bank that comes to you every single month. So I think that as much as people like to doubt Game Pass, I think it's an important part of Xbox now. I think it's what's really made them even be anywhere near competitive this generation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, Game Pass folks, and ourselves included, something to look forward to. So I'm excited to see where the service goes from here. So, all right. Assassin's Creed story number 2 goes to Japan. Japan will be its next setting. This is from GameSpot's Darren Bonthrees. Assassin's Creed Shadows, release date, gameplay, and everything we know. Japan has been a dream destination for Assassin's Creed fans, and at long last, Ubisoft is booking a trip to the east in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Originally revealed under the working title of Codename Red, Assassin's Creed Shadows sticks to the open world formula of previous games in the series while focusing on two key characters in its story. Players will experience the history of feudal Japan as Yasuke and Naoe, two protagonists who have their own unique methods for taking down enemies. Following its cinematic reveal trailer, here's everything we know. So it is locked in for a launch date of November 15th. If you have Ubisoft Plus Premium, you'll be able to get it a few days early on November 12th. It will be releasing on PC, Mac, PS5, and Xbox Series X/S. And the new installment will be leaving the last gen consoles behind. So it's basically built specifically for the current gen consoles. Similar to 2015's Assassin's Creed Syndicate, Shadows has two protagonists, the shinobi Naoe and the real-life samurai Yasuke. Players will be able to switch between them as they play through the campaign. Yasuke is thought to have been born in Mozambique and brought to Japan, and historical records show that he served the daimyo Oda Nobunaga. Not much else is known about him, but Ubisoft says he'll interact with powerful historical figures of the era. And then while players will explore a tale of honor, justice, and belonging as Yasuke, Naoe will serve as a stealthy option who is inspired by the roots of Assassin's Creed series. The fictional daughter of historical figure Fujibayashi Nagato, Naoe operates from the shadows with her ninja skills. And it kind of goes on from there. It talks about some of the combat and stealth and various seasons and things like that. But really, the main point of discourse this past week has been people being very upset about an African American samurai. So,
African. I don't think he originated.
African, yeah.
I don't think America existed at the time.
Yeah, true. African samurai. So they were a bit. Folks are a bit put off by Ubisoft's adaptation of Yasuke, who is Yasuke. I keep going to the instead of the Yasuke, who is indeed depicted in historical records as being a retainer slash basically samurai of serving under Oda Nobunaga, being carrying his weapons and that sort of thing. So very fervorous debate online about this, and honestly, it's silly. The whole thing is extremely silly. Like, just play the game, just enjoy the video game, or not. That's fine. But I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm curious though. We have this coming out in November. We have Ghost of Tsushima 2. We don't really have dates or anything for that yet. I'm hoping that we'll hear something at Summer Game Fest, but we can talk about that more another time. We have Rise of the Ronin, which came out not too long ago, and so I'm wondering if Assassin's Creed will be enough as an IP to bring people into that sort of samurai world, or if people are going to be kind of samurai'd out or tapped out of that feudal Japan feeling, because Ghost of Tsushima did just have its release on PC, so that is sort of refreshed in a lot of people's minds right now too. So
yeah, but I feel like Sony does the whole gap long enough that like Ghost of Tsushima came out, but it's like I guess like I don't hear like Ghost of Tsushima everywhere. You know what I mean? It's sort of like they just kind of put it on Steam and just whoever wants it gets it. So I think that by the time November rolls around, there'll be plenty enough distance. I think that if they do announce Ghost of Tsushima 2 is probably a next year thing, and like this will kind of have its like a space of its own in these, as far as samurai genre goes in that time of the year.
yeah.
What I want to know is like, does this get you like hyped at all for Assassin's Creed? Because like for me, I've been kind of burned down on Assassin's Creed. I'm kind of like, like that's cool, but I don't know if it's gonna be enough to get me like, oh yeah, I need to play this next Assassin's Creed. However, my mind might change once I see actual gameplay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, again, you're right. I think there's enough of a gap between obviously what's coming with Ghost of Tsushima 2. It and I think the IP itself, like I do think Assassin's Creed has enough of a draw with its audience, and folks have been really wanting to play an Assassin's Creed game in this setting. So I think people are going to be very excited, and we'll see ultimately how all of this drama controversy bears out, if it does at all, when the game actually arrives. But I am looking forward to it. Regardless, I know I'm gonna check it out. I'm like, I know I'm gonna check it out, but I'm just wondering if you know, the broader gaming community is going to be like, oh, I just finished up Ghost of Tsushima again on PC, or I went back to Rise of Ronin, because I am seeing a lot of that as well online. I'm seeing a lot of people who passed on Rise of the Ronin because it got sort of meh reviews at launch, right? And now they're going back to it and they're like, wait, this game is a lot of fun. What the heck? And so I'm just wondering if that's going to be sort of a slow burn over the next few months, and then maybe have some impact.
Yeah, I mean that's what Greg Miller from Kind of Funny's been on about. Like, oh yeah, like the story's just meh, but like I had a lot of fun with like the gameplay mechanics themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, third full story. Emulators now officially in the App Store for Apple TV. This is from Christopher Grant at Polygon. Your Apple TV may have become one of the best retro gaming devices out there overnight. The RetroArch video game emulation front end was released on the iOS App Store yesterday, alongside popular PSP emulator PPSSPP, or PSPS. PSPP. While the popular and more elegant Delta emulator emulates 6 Nintendo consoles for iOS at the moment, RetroArch's somewhat unwieldy UI brings support for a wild 78 emulators, covering a wide range of console and computer systems. But it also brings one other notable feature. It's the first emulator to be released for Apple's TV OS App Store, as spotted by MacStories' Sigmund Judge. And that's all because of a historic change in policy from Apple. In March, the company released an iOS update that included concessions to comply with the European Union's Digital Markets Act, which forced the tech giant to open its platform to alternative app marketplaces in Europe. Of course, one reason the user might travel outside of Apple's walled garden would be to acquire a video game emulator, and Apple changed a long-standing policy to allow video game emulators a month later, in an effort to head off that eventuality. Before RetroArch's release, it was technically possible to use game emulators on Apple TV via AirPlay, effectively casting Delta to the Apple TV, but native support means no casting latency and the ability to use an actual gamepad instead of your phone's slippery glass screen. With RetroArch, you'll be able to play games from classic Sega systems like Master System, Genesis, and Saturn, as well as more obscure consoles like the Watara Supervision. The article goes on, as access to video game emulators becomes simpler and the hardware more capable of providing a high quality experience, like playing Sega Genesis games on Apple TV, for example, the emulation community and the platforms that they are being distributed on are creating a moment similar to that of the iPod in the early aughts. The technology existed to play MP3 files, but it wasn't until the iPod's release that it became truly mainstream. And once playing MP3s was easy, the question of where you got all those MP3s from in the first place changed music distribution forever, first with the iTunes Store and later streaming services like Spotify. Yes, so we had talked a little bit about, the emulation change and how emulators come to the App Store is, or marketplaces really coming to the App Store is sort of a big deal. And so it's very cool to see these emulators coming to the Apple TV.
I'm
That's
so
awesome.
hyped that this is finally happening. Like before this, like if before it came officially available in the in the App Store, it's such a pain in the ass. Like, yeah, you could cast it, but then that's still using your phone, which is using your battery, and that sucks. And you could another way to go about it was jailbreaking your Apple TV, which is another pain in the butt. So finally, an easy way to do it. Reminder to everyone listening at home: you can connect your Xbox controller, either Xbox One or one of the Series controllers, PS4, PS5, and they'll just work with your Apple TV. Even the Nintendo Switch Pro will work on an Apple TV. So take advantage of it. If install it and see how it goes, because Apple's devices, like those Apple Silicon chips, are really good at emulating. Arguably, they're the best devices for emulating older consoles like PlayStation 2, GameCube, Wii, PS1 on down.
Yeah, I really they did. I'm surprised they didn't really mention like Super Nintendo or anything like that being on there, and I think it's because I don't know if RetroArch supports the Nintendo systems or not. I'm not sure. Do you know?
I think it does. Like again, 78. Like that's
Yeah.
an
I-
insane amount.
If
It
it's not
has to be.
including the Nintendo platforms, I'm wondering what else could be on there. But but yeah, so yeah, this is great to open the doors, to be able to allow people to experience games that you can't access anymore, you can't play anymore, right? There's nowhere for you to really experience these things, and emulators allow you to do that. So
Yeah, and like you don't need a whole PC to do this because before you would need, a really nice CPU specifically. Like GPUs have never been like a huge like requirement to emulate, but like CPUs are like, yeah, you need to have, the Core i7 or the Core i9 to really like push things because and a bunch of memory. But like again, these Apple chips are just so good at emulating that it's nice. It's this little tiny box that sits underneath your TV. You can easily connect your controller to it and you're off to the races, you know?
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so yeah, excited. If you have an Apple TV, check it out. Do some emulating. Introduce, if you have kids, introduce the kids to games of yesteryear. Fire up RetroArch and play some Vector Man or something. I don't know. So yeah, it'll be a good time. Last story, story number 3.5. Excuse me. Transistor turns 10 today. Happy birthday, Transistor. This was the first game from a little studio known as Supergiant Games, uh, led by Greg Casavan, and I vividly recall this game. I vividly recall playing this game when it came out. It still remains a fantastic game. Uh, Great voice acting, which I think Supergiant Games continues to be recognized for. Just really well cast characters. Had really unique combat, sort of like a strategy action RPG sort of combat where you had limited, movement and then certain abilities and attacks that could inflict certain statuses and had certain ranges. There were environmental obstacles and things like that to consider. And then it was just a really cool aesthetic, this sort of sci-fi, very technical or technologically inspired world. Um, and yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to Transistor and a shout out to Supergiant Games because they released this, they released Pyre, and then they released Hades. um, and Hades forever changed the roguelike genre, and now Hades 2 is here as well and getting rave reviews. And so just a very strong start to a promising studio. They also did Bastion as well, I think. And that actually reminds me, I think Bastion was. Hold on, let's see a second. I don't have a. No, okay. Bastion was the first game. That was 2011. So they did do Bastion first, but then Transistor came after that. But yeah, Transistor was a great time, and happy birthday to Transistor. Did you ever check out this title, Alan, or no?
I remember it vaguely when it came out, but I never got a chance to play it. So, like, I remember people saying it was a really good game, but I never actually got to play it for myself.
Do yourself a favor. I don't know if it's on where it's at. I don't know if it's on Game Pass or what.
It was a PlayStation title, like a PlayStation Plus, like one of the monthly games. Like I remember that, but the PS5 is dead right now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, anyways, try to find a place that. Yeah, I know that your PS5 is dead. So when that's either up and running again, find a way to play it because I think you'll enjoy it. I think also you have a deal for us related to speaking of Game Pass. So what's on the docket?
Yeah, so if you go over to woot.com, that's an Amazon subsidiary, they have Game Pass Ultimate 3 months for $36.99. And that's usually anywhere from between $44.99 to $49.99, depending on what retailer you go to. So it's a good way to get in on Game Pass, and you can easily get four of those for like the year. And the biggest reason I bring this up is because part of like sort of these rumors of oh yeah, Call of Duty is coming to Game Pass is that there's most likely going to be a price increase. So if you can kind of like get yourself locked in, especially that higher tier, that would probably be a good move. Especially since it seems like they are going to be backing Game Pass with putting Call of Duty on it. So yeah, that's the deal that I've got.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that just about covers everything for today. So thanks everyone for listening. Until next time, I'm Jeremy.
I'm Alan.
Keep gaming, everybody.
See ya.